Good afternoon, and welcome to CIO Leadership and Career Development Webinar Series. This episode is on Smooth Job Transitions, a webinar tweet chat combo from Health Systems CIO. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. My name is Anthony Guerra. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Health Systems CIO, and I will be your moderator today. We are having a simultaneous tweet chat hosted by Kate Gamble, our Managing Editor and Director of Social Media. You can participate in a separate browser or on your phone by using the hashtag HSCIOchat, or you can simply view the tweet chat in the Media Viewer panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll also be using the Q&A panel today, so definitely send in your questions as they occur to you, and we will take those later in the program. And you can download the deck by using the URL on your screen. It's at the bottom of our slides, and it's being sent out in the chat box. Just so you see how we're going to spend our time today, first we're going to go about 35 or 40 minutes with our featured panel discussion, and then we're going to have our Q&A, and our panel consists of Julie Bonello, SVP and CIO at Presbyterian Healthcare Services, Mike Lely, CIO at Baptist Health, and Aaron Meary, CIO at Dell Medical School and UT Health Austin. So without any further delay, we're going to jump right into our conversation. Julie, let's start with you. Can you give us an overview of your organization and your role?
Sure. I'm the Senior Vice President and CIO here at Presbyterian Health Services. We are the largest health provider in the state of New Mexico. We have a 9-hospital system and a medical group of 1,000 and, serving 1.2 patient visits per year. We are a provider plan integrated organization, so we have provider health plan that serves 500,000 members with Medicare Advantage, Medicaid, and commercial product lines. And the other part that we have is a managed service organization that supports our plan, but also supports other customers and their plans as well.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Michael?
Sure. Thanks for having me today. Just like Julie, Baptist Health in Arkansas, we're the largest healthcare provider in the state. We have 11 hospitals, 140-plus clinics, and now extended into eastern Oklahoma as well. About 13,000 employees, and we've been an EPIC organization since 2010.
Okay, very good. Aaron?
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So Dell Medical School and UT Health Austin are the components of the University of Texas at Austin. We are the largest academic medical center in Travis County. We are obviously a gigantic part of the research arm for the university and a tremendous amount of research going on within the healthcare continuum. Our physicians are both faculty as well as practicing clinicians. And then we also have a medical school component on top of that dimension as well. So to the degree that I have all the arms you can possibly imagine from a medical center, from a actual medical school to the research component and, of course, our healthcare enterprise practice.
All right, very good. Michael, let's start with you. Obviously, this is trying to frame our discussion. We're talking about, job transitions. So we start sort of at the beginning in how I'm thinking about it and talk about job satisfaction. We're not transitioning anywhere unless we are looking for something else, something different. So tell me how you think of job satisfaction and, what keeps you somewhere versus what makes you want to look around.
Well, I think that's a good question. It's how I wake up in the morning. So when I wake up in the morning, am I invigorated? Am I excited about my day in terms of what I'm working on and what I'm doing and what we're achieving? So around me, it's living the passion things I'm passionate about, and am I able to drive towards those things? Are we driving towards change, innovation, or are we just staying stagnant? And so that's how I really look at it is what are we doing to evolve how we're providing care for our patients? How are we meeting our consumers where they are and not where we are necessarily? And that's what I'm really passionate about. And as long as I'm doing that, I'm really satisfied in my job. when that stops, that can become frustrating and make things a little more dull.
Now stopping, you don't have to feel like that every single day, right? I mean, that's too much to expect. So when you say stopping, you mean sort of in a larger way than, today's going to be a rough day.
No, absolutely, on a more grandiose scale in terms of whenever the organization isn't looking to really evolve or to get better, and it's just resting on where they are today or those sort of things. That's where the frustration starts to mount.
Mm-hmm.
Very good, Aaron.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I would agree with Michael on his comments there. There's a colloquialism that I've heard recently that I actually really appreciate, which is, don't always think the grass is greener on the other side. There could be a septic issue there. So one of the things that you need to consider, one of the things you've got to consider is that because you're frustrated one day doesn't mean that's something that extends itself out, to the continuum of what you do day to day. And it's important for us to take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And again, what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to change? And also something I ask myself is, what am I leaving for my family? For my girls, are we growing something that is beneficial? Are we growing something for tomorrow? And are we doing something that I can confidently tell anybody, in my case, in the city of Austin, that, we've made healthcare better today than it was yesterday. So if you can look at those dimensions and really, tell yourself this is the reality, then you're in a good spot. And it's when things continually build up that you start getting frustrated. You need to just take a step back and really make sure you answer the question, am I really unhappy or am I just frustrated? And can I change the circumstances around me before you make a big jump?
Very good. Very good. Julie?
For me, I want to always feel as though I'm of value, and really wanting to get joy out of my work. When I think about value, I want to make sure that I'm providing a very healthy environment for my coworkers. I think about the time we spend at work and the focus that we have on the health and well-being of our patients, and that then extends to the health and well-being of everyone we work with. And so for me, it is, feeling that I'm always of significant value, and that I'm pushing the needle on what it means to provide a healthy environment.
Yeah, so it sounds like, we hear the words value, engagement, passion, innovation, affecting change. So it's that feeling that we're accomplishing something here. So that's a high bar. It's an appropriate bar, but I have a feeling a lot of people listening are thinking that's quite a high bar. And it should be probably something that people aspire to. All right. Let's go to the next question. Aaron, let's start with you on this one. Usually one is not leaving a job per se, but leaving it for another job. Talk about comparing one's current and known and perhaps less than perfect situation with an uncertain future. And we'll get into more about how you can ascertain as much as possible about an opportunity, but you're still going from, the devil which keeps a lot of people in place. They say, well, I know what it is here, even though I don't like it. So talk about that uncertainty of going.
Yeah, great question. So a couple things. Number one, I think our industry is very unique in that healthcare never forgets, right? So to the degree of it, how you enter an organization is just as important as how you exit the organization. And so the degree of respect and the degree of partnership needs to be there even if you do choose to move on. So for folks that move on, if you're coming into an organization, some of the things I do is I reach out to folks I know that have recently left the org. I'll reach out to them via LinkedIn if I don't know them, or through people I know, and say, hey, what did you like? What did you didn't like? What was positive? What was not positive? And just try to glean as much as I can from folks that were at the organization and some of the things they say. And again, I go back to, if they're respectful, even if there's negative situations, at least they'll tell you the truth of what's going on. You can kind of ascertain what's the environment, what's the culture, that sort of thing. The other thing that's important is to talk to your peers. It's amazing how many of us know, respective durations that are going on in an organization and can actually talk to some of the dimensions that may be hard to pick up on. And if you do still continue to move forward and want to join the organization, it also sets a framework for your first 90 to 120 days as to, hey, these are some of the perception challenges or real challenges that need to be knocked out of the park. And it gives you a sense of, okay, here's what's going to be the true north and all of that. And last but not least, I would say this: listen to your gut. If your gut tells you that it's going to be a positive situation for you and your family moving forward, listen to that. It's hardly ever wrong.
What if your gut is just fear? What if that's what's telling you no?
Yeah, and that's a totally normal thing. But fear, absent any hard information, is just fear. It's unfounded fear. If you have facts, if you have information, if you have understanding, and you have awareness, then that's a much different decision point. But don't do something knee-jerk reaction simply because of fear or a very understandable and very manageable emotion. It's one of those things that you've got to base your decisions based on fact. Otherwise, you're always going to be chasing your tail.
Very good. Julie?
I'll tell us a small story. I'll probably talk a lot about what I've just gone through in the last year. I've only been at Presbyterian for 5 months. I have spent maybe 10 years really focusing on what is of most interest to me, and that is the intersection between the provider and payer environments as we move to value-based care. And so I was in a job for 4 years working in just that area. And what's going on across the country in all healthcare organizations is tremendous change as they try to figure out how they're going to move into value-based care. And what happens is that change may or may not be good for you in terms of your own career, but it's really hard to know. And so I just have always been very, very honest about, how I can best serve the organization where I am and whether, and how I fit. And so I went through that, and I decided that I would. I know what is of great interest to me, and I always think you learn a lot by going into avenues you or in areas that you don't know, and so I decided to just take a look around. And I also, while I did that, I talked with various people throughout my former organization, and some of those conversations actually worked out and some of them didn't, because when your organization's going through a lot of change, there are a lot of different stakeholders, and so you might be forthright and honest, but sometimes those conversations work out and sometimes they may not, because they might be threatening, and that wasn't the intention. I don't know if that comes through, if that makes sense at all, but I think our organizations are getting very complex as we move to value-based care. So sometimes it's just difficult to navigate.
No, it makes sense, definitely. Michael?
So when I'm looking at my current situation and then potentially venturing out and looking for other opportunities, when I come into a new role, I'm really looking to accomplish specific things that I identified during the interview process or during my own research about where the organization I feel really needs kind of my leadership, my guidance, my drive, and those sort of things. Once I feel that those things have been met, I think that's when I potentially start looking at, okay, I've kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve here. The place is the organization is a better place. The people have been, that work for you, they have a kind of a clear succession path in terms of you've got them to where they need to be successful, then I really start looking, okay, what's the next challenge that I want to go and look at and take on. I tend to be more of a kind of a fix-it guy, and I like to look for situations in which I can still be that strategic leader, but I can also get my hands dirty. And so I like those sort of opportunities. I love the operations side of the house. And so, like I said, once I feel like I've kind of made a mark and I've really helped to improve and drive some positive and lasting change in the organization, then that's when I start looking at what other future opportunities might be out there.
Very interesting. Very good. Okay, next question. Julie, let's start with you. How can one handle job application outreach? And by this I mean actively applying for a job rather than being recruited at the executive level. How best to approach and work with recruiters? So we often hear people are approached by recruiters and tell you about an opportunity. That seems to be a smoother path. But let's say you're ready for a change and you've maybe heard about something or you want to start investigating and seeing what's out and available. Any suggestions on how people can go about that?
I can share what I did. Actually, I've done throughout my career. So for this past change, I thought that maybe it would be best if that I wouldn't really be able to do what I wanted to do, and so I was actually on vacation and thought, okay, this is the kind of job I think I want, and I defined it, wrote it down, and then I made a list of those people where I could begin to just get their counsel. And they weren't people I was going to reach out to for a job. They were just people I was going to reach out to help me refine my direction and provide me feedback. And it's really interesting when you do that. You may not be looking for a job necessarily, but the people that I contacted knew of a ton of opportunities. Actually, my very first call directed me to my present job. And so I have usually not even reached out to recruiters. I've just really reached out to my network and contacts and those people that I use for, kind of trusted advisory support. And so that's what I've actually done my whole career. I have very rarely, I think I've only been recruited to one job. Everything else has been, for my entire career, has just been, talking with people.
Okay. Very good. Michael?
Yeah, a little bit different take than Julie's, where I haven't really leveraged my network as much when I looked at new opportunities. I have established relationships with the recruiters, and I think it's good to have a check-in at some sort of regular cadence, not too often, but maybe a couple of times a year, a phone call here and there, to where you can just talk about what's going on in your world and what you're working on, and not necessarily always hear what the recruiter's working on, but just kind of stay in contact there to talk about just to build that relationship. I've also just done a lot of Google searching, and I know, I've worked within 6 different healthcare organizations, and I think 3 of them I found my own, just postings, and then I started working it from that avenue, and was fortunate enough to get the role in 3 of those. So, believe it or not, they still post executive positions out on websites, and there's things out there as well. So it takes a little bit of work to go and find that. There's some key search terms you can use. But those are things I've done. I just have the personality. I don't like to rely on other people, so I've always felt like I didn't want to bug people about my own career. So that's why I'm different than Julie, and I haven't really reached out to my contacts about that. But if you have it, by all means, leverage the heck out of it.
Well, we got two good methods there. You certainly sounds like you can use them both in tandem. Aaron?
Yeah, I agree with both Julie and Michael. I've done both, and I've also really leaned on clinical partnerships. So one of the great things with, again, as I said earlier on, this is a verification as well as you, is you eventually over the years, once you get to a senior level role, is you should have a pretty good Rolodex of clinical folks, physicians, nurses, ENT, whatever, that know you personally, and they know of folks as well across the country. And so it's amazing how many executive roles people are aware of, but they don't have any interest in filling. They're a clinician or they're a physician, but they were like, you know what, I'm going to call somebody for you and put in a good word and get you information, even before it's posted. So even to what Michael was just saying about searching for stuff that's posted, the best time to get in is before it's even posted. So you have an early discussion with folks based on word of mouth. So I would say definitely lean on your network. Definitely take the time to build and cultivate a personal network. Build relationships with the recruiters. And I've been recruited once, right? Most of the time it's been through my network or through word of mouth or through conversations with folks or because I found the role really, really interesting and totally never done before. And that's the kind of person I am. I like to, go with something that's totally untested, unproven. Let's do the unusual. But to the degree of it, it's important that along all those methods you maintain composure, partnership, professionalism, and really that sense of thank you and being humble, because people are putting in the word of mouth for you, but you're representing them. So you want to do right by them and make sure that you're a good partner in the whole thing. And also I would say this. I had one recruiter tell me this, and they told me, they said, Aaron, sorry, this is in Silicon Valley. You haven't been in a job, your last job, for more than 10 years, so you can't just leave, and I can't really assist you. I said, no problem. Thank you very much for calling and reaching out. But it really shocked me at some of the audacity I was hearing from some of the recruiters, and I said, that's okay. They have a quota to meet. They have to do what they can do. It's still incumbent upon me to be professional and maintain that, no matter what I may personally think.
Right. You didn't get into an argument. You're ridiculous. That's crazy.
Right.
All right. I just want to remind the audience that you can go ahead and send questions in as they occur to you, and we will take those. I had one question come to mind, and let me go with Julie on this one first. Julie, when we're putting the word out, when we want to investigate, we want to use different avenues. Obviously, Google searching is no big deal, but are we ever concerned that the word that we're looking will get back to our current employer, and that might not be a favorable turn of events for us? Is that a thought in the back of one's head when they start looking?
I think it is, but I've always been really upfront with my I'm getting some back talk. I'm hearing myself talk.
You sound good to me. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm upfront, so usually I've always talked with my bosses about my own path, and so I've been really open and honest, and I do that for the good of the organization where I am. And I'm saying that because a lot of organizations are going through so much change right now. To have these open and honest conversations with among the senior leadership team and with your boss, I think is always a really good thing. So I haven't been too. I'm very discreet when I look for opportunities, but I don't really talk about any. Again, what I've always done in my career is kind of a soft looking, not really hard and aggressive. So I'm kind of methodical, and that like I said before, I made a list and started to just have thoughtful conversations with people, and it just kind of happens. I think you do have to be careful, but I always think it's best as a senior leader to be upfront with your boss in terms of your career and how you fit in best with the organization.
Mm-hmm. Michael, what are your thoughts around that, around looking and your current employer, and then possibly finding out, and then perhaps you decide not to leave, and then they know you were looking, and it can get messy, right?
It can, yeah. I mean, I would be a little, and I have been a little concerned. You know, it's a trust factor, right? And so, like you said, or I think maybe Aaron said, or somebody said earlier about you know, everybody's trying to hit their quotas, and if you're working, you know, we've all heard stories of recruiters or working with an individual on a position, and they call, you know, their boss and say, hey, you know, so and so's looking to leave. Can I help you on your search? And that search is your position. So, you know, there's things out there, and you have to ensure that you're really working with reputable individuals and reputable companies. But I think what Julie said is appropriate and accurate. I mean, it's if you have that relationship and the organization promotes that sort of conversation, I think that's excellent. But we all know there's organizations in which, if you started to look elsewhere and outside the organization, that you know, they would in essence not feel the love, and you know, you can start to get shut out of things, and you know, you can burn some, you know, you can hurt some relationships there. So it's a fine line. That's why I really believe you have to work with, when you are working with recruiters or other individuals, people that are reputable. And that you can have trust in, and that's also why it's, like, you know, I said earlier, it's just important to build that trust over years, so that you can continue to leverage them in appropriate ways.
Very good, Aaron.
Yeah, so I agree with both Julie and Michael. I would also say this: don't go job hopping unless you are seriously intending to want to leave. So I say this. Don't engage recruiters unless you really, truly want to get out of your current role. It's great to check in. I agree with Michael. It's good to check in with a couple of recruiters that you do trust, and how are things going in case, you know, events happen, because it's business, right? A lot of times people make this very personal about themselves, but at the end of the day, the reality is relationships do matter, but we are all going to have events happen to us in our career versus we define every event. That's life. That's human nature. So you do need to have a plan B no matter what you do. But I would say don't go, you know, applying for every single CIO job out there and get these recruiters taking all this time and all this work for you unless you really are serious about it. What instead I would encourage you to do is say, when they do reach out to you, if you're not interested, to say, hey, thank you very much for thinking of me. Let me actually send this on to my friend George or Susie or Dwayne or whomever, and let me help you by giving you referrals, and you build that trust over time. So if you find yourself in the situation of meeting them, then you're good to go. So I think trust works both ways in that as long as you're sincere and genuine in your efforts, they'll be sincere as well as maintain confidentiality, that they won't tell your current employer. But as Julie said, you should strive to build a relationship that's open. And if it furthers your career goals, assume that you're a manager who want to become a director, or a director who want to become a CIO. If you're open with your boss, they'll understand. They'll get that. It's not personal. It's professional.
Right. You know, one of the interesting things that I wonder about is it more out in the open, and you have to be more careful when you are working with recruiters? Because I've really not worked so much with recruiters in getting my positions, but yet if you work aggressively with recruiters, is that you know, are the chances higher through that effort that it will get out, and you have to be more careful? Because it almost the other way around is kind of under the radar.
Yeah, I go back to, and Julie, that's a great question. I personally think that the risk is always there, no matter if you're working with one or a dozen. And if you are aggressively working with recruiters, obviously there's a circumstance that you need to remedy to be able to leave and move somewhere else. So then I would ask the question, does it matter if word gets out, if you're that aggressive with them? But to the degree of it, the good recruiters out there have a pretty good oath, because their word matters in this line of industry, and that if they get onto the known list of people who out there tell the world that you're looking, then a lot of other folks won't work with them. A case in point, let's assume, Julie, you're working with a recruiter, and they out you to the world, and suddenly you're out of favor with your organization. If and when the time comes that I'm starting to look at, or whomever's looking at it, they're going to think twice about working with that recruiter. And as I said before, these recruiters have to maintain that partnership. They're not out to get you. They all mean well. I found that in working with them. But to the degree of it, being careful is always pragmatic.
Great conversation. Aaron, I want to follow up on something you were saying about being serious about if you're going to move forward with something. And I think what may happen, what some people may do, is they're having a bad time at work, they get frustrated, and they start applying for one or more positions that are not perfect for them, don't fulfill their dreams and that kind of a thing, but they're just desperate to move. And I think when they do that, sometimes they start going down the path and maybe get an interview, maybe 2 interviews, before they sort of come to their senses and realize, you know what, this isn't a step up, this isn't really what I want. And then they've, I don't know if burned a bridge is the word, but they've certainly roughed up the bridge because they either pull back and now that institution maybe has less trust in them should they go forward. I just want to get your thoughts a little more around that concept of it's not sort of a victimless crime, so to speak. If you go out and you make people work, as you said, and you do interviews, you are taking people's time, and you should do it thoughtfully. You shouldn't just do it because you just want to see. But, you know, you can get information, and we'll get into that. You should be able to investigate and get more information, and if you find out at some point this is not for me, that's all fair, right, because you were being genuine. But just to go check it out and sort of willy-nilly is a problem, isn't it?
I would absolutely agree with that. So authenticity and being genuine are 2 of the most important characteristics, whether you're job hunting, whether you're in the job, whether you're leading, whether you're an individual contributor. I personally have a tough time resolving and compartmentalizing and dealing with people who are disingenuous in their intentions or what they say or whatnot. And I think that goes universally for everybody. And so it's totally fine for you to do your homework on an organization that did the homework on you, and then you realize, you know what, this isn't going to work, and you have an open and honest conversation about whatever that is. But if you're just doing something because you want to travel and they're offering you a round trip ticket to come visit them in whatever part of the country that you've never been to, that's just I know people that have done that, and I coach them all the time. You know what? That's not the right thing to do, because guess what? You may get 1 or 2 freebies, but after that, when you really do want that role in whatever organization, they're going to pass you up, because who wants a disingenuous person on their staff, particularly in a leadership role?
That's mind-blowing that someone would even conceive of doing that to me.
That opportunity almost happened. I mean, for me, I was a recruiter, and there was an opportunity out in Hawaii. And I had some calls with the recruiter and just exploring it. And mind you, I'm a Midwest boy, but so moving to Hawaii sounded awesome. And so yeah, they wanted to bring me out there, and I told my wife, I said, well, we could go there for free flights. But I was like, no, we're not going to do that. But I was like, yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about it. She's like, well, I'm not moving to Hawaii. I said, oh, okay, good point. Yeah, you start, but yeah, absolutely. Aaron's right. I've known him too. It's just, I get a chance to go out to San Diego and meet with a health system, and I got a free flight out there, and I'll stay a week, and it's not appropriate. What I would say is, for the most part, you should really only get serious about those organizations, those roles that you're truly interested in. Don't start applying out of despair because you're frustrated. It's the grass comment in the septic tank by Aaron earlier was spot on. There's going to be frustration wherever you go, and so really just look for the right opportunity, the right location, and that's your spouse, your partner, significant other is aligned with as well, before you really start committing everybody's time towards that effort.
Well, it's so hard to go through this, right? When you're looking for a job and going through any type of recruiting. So you have to really know what you want to do. Yeah. And it's so super important.
Yeah,
I had a good mentor one time.
Go ahead, Aaron.
I had a mentor tell me one time that it's just important to have a good sense in your shoulders of where you want to go, as much as your spouse or your partner knows where you want to go and is supportive of that. having someone to talk to at home about this and really reason through it, and I think what Michael said was spot on, having somebody to call you nuts and say, we're not moving to Hawaii, is what you need. Sometimes because you can get, you really can get tripped up in it and start thinking, yeah, you know what? I can definitely move to the middle of Alaska and make this mine, no matter what that is. It's like negative writer. So it's important that you have that system, and we have each other to lean on. Lean on your network, lean on your friends, lean on people who are willing to call you nuts, because those are the people you can trust the most when you have these moments to think through.
Yeah, and I want to touch on something Julie said before that I have always thought made a lot of sense in anyone who I've talked to who was out of work, and you can almost hear that temporary panic or that panic in their voice. And I have always said, slow down, forget about what's out there. Don't make that your first step. Sit down and come up with your dream job, right? Use this as an amazing opportunity to define, if you could make up a job, write it down, and then go see if you can find it. And don't just focus on what jobs are listed out there. Call people in your network at different health systems and say, hey, this is what I want to do. Somebody might create a position for you. Does that make sense, Michael?
Yeah, I think it is, and I know people whenever they get out of a role, life and reality kicks in of how am I going to basically support my family, and so you do start looking for those roles that maybe take you a step backwards within your career or within an organization that is just not going to be a good fit for whatever reason. And so I do think really, having a game plan, and I really can't speak of developing. I haven't thought about it like that. I think that's an interesting way, Anthony, of kind of defining what your ideal role was and work to see how you can achieve that. But I think just kind of scoping out a plan of, okay, do I want to continue on the provider side or payer side, like in Julie's case, or do I want to look at consulting? Do I want to look at sales within the vendor? Really identify what you would have interest and be good at and be willing to do, and not just try to find the first thing that comes along, right, and then everybody's just going to be unhappy.
Right, Aaron?
Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. I mean, to the degree of it, as I said earlier, I go back to authenticity. If you are authentic in the way you're going about it, no matter what it is, whether you are deliberately job hopping, whether you are investigating an opportunity that does further your goals, like Michael was saying, or whether it is that there is truly something that's insurmountable in your current workplace, and you can't have a really constructive conversation and move the ball along, and yeah, it's kind of be a genuine in your actions. But so many people I'm aware of, want the title. They want to be a CIO because it's the cool title. I'm the decision maker. I have news for everybody that thinks that hasn't been a CIO. As a CIO, you actually have some of the least power in the organization. Your job is to tee up the options to the business, the pros and the cons, weigh out the risks, explain what you recommend, and let the business decide. You're not the adjudicator of all. You're not the decision maker of all. Your job is partner and enabler. And a lot of people miss that aspect because they're shooting for the title, and they take a role or they go after a role and they realize they're miserable because what they were really happy in doing was maybe coding or building a service or working on an application. They never really wanted to be a CIO, and they never really wanted to find themselves in the firing line of all these different personalities. So you really have to ask yourself, what do I want to be when I grow up, and then strive for that.
Very good, really good. Julie?
Yeah, I concur with everyone. I have always kind of looked toward, defining my true north. I have really not looked at jobs from where I wanted to go for the next title. And so I've made some choices in my career where people have asked me, what are you doing? And it's because I'm interested in what I'm going to be doing in the job, and it's following my true north in terms of what I'm interested in and how I want to use my time to help help healthcare and leverage technology successfully, but it's been my path and nobody else's path. And right. So it's definitely been been driven by a lot of thought in terms of what makes me go and what is what's my passion.
Very good. I have an audience question I want to get to, so here it is. Any advice for virtual job applications? Is the use of AI a true concern, necessitating intentional machine-readable content? Your take on cover letters in the same context. So, Aaron, let me start with you. I think the question is asking, I guess the people who receive the materials are using some AI to read it. Is that how you read the question?
Yeah, and I've been reading a lot of those applications. There's two things. One is the AI to read the applications and then sort of double check you and make sure you're not, fibbing any on your resume or your cover letter. But number two, there's also some facial recognition software now for people that are applying virtually or via like a sort of a WebEx to be able to kind of, read your expressions, your body language, and tell if you're lying or whatnot. I've seen all of those algorithms. I'll tell you what, all those things are it's like clinical decision support, right? All the great clinical decision support in your electronic medical record is not going to be able to really determine an outcome. It's going to be able to influence and help. But if somebody wants to do something, if they really want to prescribe Percocet or whatever else, guess what? They're going to prescribe Percocet no matter how many alerts and prompts you put in front of them. So to the degree of it, as long as you're authentic and genuine, you have nothing to worry about. I think the people who are concerned the most are those who maybe have had one or two circumstances where they have either themselves done something maybe that wasn't 100% authentic, or they've had that around them and they've seen that and they're concerned about it. I would say don't worry about it, because all those decision support aids are just like a clinical decision support in your EMR. They're there to help, but you still have to make sure that the person's authentic on the other side of the line.
Very good. Julie or Michael, any comments on that?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know too much on the AA side in terms of from a resume and cover letter perspective. My only thought is if you're able to take care of business and really be instrumental in providing tremendous value to your organizations, that stuff will be picked up on your resume with those sort of systems. As for the cover letter, I haven't done one of those in years, and I don't know if that's the appropriate answer or not. I just haven't utilized them. More, if I were doing my own search, I would include my resume with kind of about a paragraph within the email to somebody of influence within the organization about my interest and a little bit about my background. Again, I don't know if that's the right answer. Just what I've done in the past.
Works for me, Julie. Anything on that?
I suppose it's good from the initial weeding perspective, in terms of the critical thinking that we've all done in looking over cover letters and resumes. But thank goodness for the human interaction as we get a lot further along in the process.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
Let me add something. Can I add something really quickly? I want to resurface what Michael said a little bit ago, which I think is the most important thing for everybody listening, is that don't send your resume out blindly. Go work at something. If there's a lead there that is they posted it, reach out to the recruiter on LinkedIn. Reach out to the senior executives. Go reach out to the CEO. There's nothing wrong with showing genuine interest and having a genuine passion for wanting to learn more. That is the number one predictor of you getting the job. Is how bad do you want it? How bad are you going to work it? I know too many people say, well, I've mailed my resume into 1,000 places and I haven't heard back. Well, gee, I wonder why. Would you go hire somebody to just send you something to your mailbox? Do you answer everybody that says, hey, I've got $10 million for you in an account in South Africa if you contact me? Of course not. It's the same thing with the resumes. You can't just send a resume out blindly. Go be passionate, go be yourself, and let your work and let your story speak for you.
Yep, go get it, right? Go get it. I like that. Next question, Michael, let's start with you. What are some ways to learn as much as possible about a new opportunity? What are some steps that can and should be taken before making a decision?
Yeah, so I think Aaron touched on this a little bit earlier. Healthcare is a extremely transient industry. A lot of people moving around, especially in the consultant world and in the vendor world, and you're sure to have some sort of alignment there with people who have some sort of interaction with those organizations, and I did it within my current organization. I knew of a couple of companies that had done some strategy work, and I knew them professionally through Chime, I believe it was. And so I reached out to them and probably had 2 or 3 phone calls around just the organization, around what I was looking for, and those sort of things. And I really leveraged that. I mean, you can go and review 990s and the website, but the websites will always be great and glowing. But that's what I've found successful is find that third party that has some interactions with that organization and learn as much as you can through those avenues.
Very good, Julie.
I guess what I'll add is just the steps that you need to take to make sure it's good for you and your family in terms of where you are. There's a lot, I think, that needs to if you're moving, that's one thing. If you're changing another job, I think you have to go through several conversations with your family to know how a job fits.
Very good. Very good. All right. Can we take the concept of the fact that the applicant is also interviewing the health system too far? Can you ask too many questions and sort of become inappropriate with your granularity? I mean, the thing is, we want to know so much. It's such a big decision. Can that be overdone, Michael?
Yeah, there's an appropriate way to do everything. People come in and they'll talk about, well, I'm interviewing the company too, and that's true. But you have to keep in mind that this organization also has other applicants, and so you don't want to come in and with the bravado that you're the best thing since sliced bread. But I think an appropriate amount of investigation in the organization, and especially around who your leader is going to be and just how open the organization is. And I've came to the organizations where I didn't understand kind of the dynamics between who I was going to be reporting to and my role, and it didn't work out very well. It was one where I was just everybody. There was a lot of turnover within like 5 years. I think there were 4 CIOs or something around that, and so that's something that I didn't really do earlier on in my career a lot of due diligence in. So I think that understanding those dynamics is important. But you have to understand, don't go too far because there are other people, and you don't want to really put yourself off that you're the best thing to happen to this organization, because you most likely aren't.
So, Aaron, it sounds like from what Michael's saying, you better get the information that's really important to you, but don't get every bit of information that you could possibly get, right? Pick your battles, so to speak, and be appropriate.
He's exactly right. There is a level of overdoing it. Again, you can talk to people that have left the organization via LinkedIn or other means, and they'll be as open with you about some of those questions as your professional interview. But don't just go into an interview asking questions about, hey, who was my predecessor? Why did they leave? Is he a long timer? Don't go have that bravado and that lack of professionalism. Go in there with well articulated questions. Half of your questions. So first of all, what I always do is always write down my questions before I even go into an interview. Yep. I take the top 20 or 25 things I really want to know. I try to whittle it down to about half, to about 12 or 13 truly hard hitting, great questions. And of those 12 or 13, 3 or 4 of them are about something I've read recently about the organization. Ask the organization, hey, I saw you won a Baldrige Award, or saw that you're building a new research institute to do X, Y, and Z. Tell me more about it, right? Show interest in the organization as much as you want to know the tactile stuff, because it all adds up in the end to give you a total picture of what's going on.
And Aaron, there's nothing wrong with having those written down in some kind of nice, pad folio, whatever they call it. And what about taking notes? Is there anything inappropriate about that?
I think it's critical. You're going to forget half of what you hear throughout the entire day, and on that plane ride back, you're going to be like, what did they tell me about how many people work here, what my budget is? But if you take those quick notes, and often what I'll say is, hey, I'm going to write that down. It's a great point. Thank you. And I'm notifying the person I'm interviewing with that I'm actually writing down and I'm showing interest because this is important to me, what you told me. It sends a nonverbal cue back to them saying, wow, they took an interest in what I just told them. They really do care. They're writing it down on a little piece of paper. And even if it's for your own memory, it sends a signal of authenticity. Again, it comes back to being genuine and being true to what you mean.
Well, Julie, let's play devil's advocate there. You know, one could perceive that as the person doing the interviewing. You could see someone come in with a pad and questions and asking questions from their pad and taking notes. I would imagine you could have someone who's doing the interviewing who likes that and respects it. You could have someone who finds that inappropriate while you're writing down everything I say. It feels like they're talking to a reporter. Is that even conceivable that someone might not like that?
Oh, yeah, I think so, because you're trying to see how you fit in with the organization, right? You're trying to ask questions. I call it humble inquiry, so that you know, so you can actually build trusting relationships through the process. So if you're too intense, that's going to be difficult. One of the things that I've done, just to add on to the conversation, you know, when you're in an interview process, you could be talking to, I don't know, like I've been through some situations where it's been 20 to 30 people over several different days. And so a lot of times I have a bunch of different frameworks that I use. What I do is I summarize what I've heard, and then I just, then what I do is I summarize it with my framework, and I ask people, is this what I've heard? And it's almost like a consulting study where I'm providing a deliverable back to the organization or whoever's really driving the interview process. And that's really been hugely successful for me. But I do it for myself too. But that way, it provides almost a document that you're working on together.
Very good. Any other comments? Anyone on that? Okay.
I would say this. I think we talk a lot about one-on-one. There's also circumstances where you're going to have panel interviews. Where you're going to have multiple people interviewing, whether it's physicians, whether it's clinicians, whether it's other executives. It's important to maintain eye contact and dialogue with every single one of them, engage everybody in the room, because I have found oftentimes the quietest person in the room is sometimes the most senior leader in the room. So to the degree of it, engage panels as open and authentic as you would a one-on-one discussion. It's just as important, and they're all watching for little things.
Aaron, so it sounds like it's what the doctors face when they're trying to stay engaged with the patient, but they're putting things in the EMR. If you're taking notes in front of either one person or a panel, you've got to be very delicate about it. You can't have your head down, right?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Remember, you have to maintain professionalism, that executive presence, and again, be authentic. Be yourself. Crack a joke. As you can tell, I like to say little quips here and there, so be you, because that's the only way they can truly assess you and you can assess them.
I'm going to try and sneak in one more question here. I'm sure everybody's got to get going, but I did want to get in one more thing. Julie, let's start with you. What are some potential things that could sour you on a potential job during the hiring process, either something you could experience during the process or something you could find out? What are some things folks should look out for when they say, that's the deal breaker, I'm done?
Well, for me, I always like to understand the business and how they are trying to leverage technology. So I don't want to ever get into an interview situation, where I'm not going to learn about the healthcare business first. And so if it's the other way around for me, and that we're just talking about IT, I'm completely soured. Mm-hmm. Because for me, we're all here in IT so that we can leverage technology to support the business objectives of the organization. So to understand completely about the strategic initiatives of the organization and where they see their organization going, and describe that is hugely important for me. And it tells me right away what kind of a leader I'll be within the organization.
Right, what they think of IT.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Aaron?
I would say that a lot of these executive interviews are, I call them marathon sessions, where it's not just of one person. You're interviewing with 10, 20, 30, 40 people, perhaps over several days, perhaps several meetings. You're coming back and forth. And if an organization is prompt and they give you a calendar and a schedule and those people show up on time and they take the time and fully invest, then that's great. If folks are bailing on your interview, or suddenly you're having major changes without there being some extenuating event, or people are just showing you interest to try to wrap it up within 5 minutes, those are the sort of the turnoffs, because it tells you about the organizational culture of what they think about IT. Some organizations, you walk in the door and you can quickly see that, boy, this place values technology, they value my input, they value how I can contribute to the business strategy, to what Julie was saying. Some places you walk into, they say, you know what, you're managing a bottom line and I want you to cut by 10% every year. You're just keeping the lights on. You're the IT guy. And you know what, just sit there and don't say anything. You have to decide what kind of organization to be part of. And you can tell that quickly by people's actions and not based upon their words.
Very good. Michael?
Yeah, I've experienced it where I've been offered jobs and I turn them down just because of the interactions during the interview. It's a little bit conversant with what Julie said is, in some of these specific instances, I met with the executives, but I never met with one person from IT or from any technology department at all. And so that was troubling to never meet with those individuals and learn a little bit about them and learn a little bit about their organization. Also, where they just talk about all the problems within IT, but there's never cultural conversations about you or about the organization and what type of individual will be successful within the organization. It's just about, here's our problem, how are you going to fix it, or how have you fixed it in the past? And then you'll see sometimes, and I'm just like Aaron and Julie, is that you'll talk to 30 or 40 people during the interview process, other executives, VPs, and when you start seeing them speak negatively about one another in some instances, Julie's great, but Aaron, man, I don't know.
Yeah, not Aaron.
That's probably right, Aaron, right? But you see that, and that comes out, and if it's like that during the interview process, just imagine what it's going to be like when you're there. So I think there's things that it's good that you get to meet a lot of people, and sometimes the process is lengthy because you learn so much more about what you're potentially going to step into.
Wow, what a tremendous conversation. I can't thank our panel enough for that. That was a lot of fun and I think incredibly valuable for executives out there, any executives, because even if you're not looking now, someone's going to come to you or you will want to look at some point. So well done, folks. I appreciate it. Regarding continuing education, those of you who hold the CHIME, CHCIO certification, get 1 CEU for attending our webinars, so let CHIME know you were here, and if you've asked us to do so, we will. If you need a certificate of attendance for another CEU program, you can use the final slide in this deck. You'll receive an email when our archive recording of this event has been posted to our YouTube channel. If you want to sponsor a webinar on the topic of your choice, you can reach out to Nancy Wilcox from our team. We'll put one together for you. And you go to our website to view our upcoming webinar schedule. So with that, I want to thank our panel very much, Julie Bonello, Michael Ely, and Aaron Meary. And I want to thank you, our attendees, for coming to our events. And with that, everybody have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.